Assalamu alaikum. Um, so my question is not posed to anyone directly, but I guess it's in the order of, we know there's this problem of poverty, and in our society there are always going to be people who are in need and can use our help. And my question was more of, we know that one of the pillars of Islam is to make Hajj if you can afford it. And I didn't know, I was trying to find out, I guess, what the Islamic ruling is in terms of, would it be okay for you to put off Hajj? Because, there's always someone who could use that money to eat, or house themselves as opposed to you going to Hajj, or is it, that was, yeah, inshallah, if someone could address that.
Asma Hanif, you're sitting right next to me, so I'm going to ask you to field this question. Did everyone hear her question? It was concerned, okay, you did, very good. You want to defer to someone else? Okay. Brother Majid, would you take this? Well, we ought to just go head home.
Assalamu alaikum.
Believe me, I'm going to find one of these people to answer this question.
Let me chime in, and that is that this man sits on the North American Fiqh Council. That's his job. Right. Fiqh is his job.
I don't see that.
Muhammad Majid.
Okay, now, I tell you a very interesting story. It is true from the tradition. Actually, I'm very much, live in my teaching because of my father, rahimahullah, and my grandfather. And my father, rahimahullah, told this story in the masjid, actually, and he cried, actually, when he mentioned the story. There's one of the scholar, he has agreed to go with the group for Hajj. And that long time ago, when people used to ride camels and, boat and so forth. And they made arrangement, and therefore he told his group that we live in this particular date, and therefore he wanted his neighbor to look after his children because they used to be like a year before they reach Mecca. Therefore he sent his son to go and to tell the neighbor that my father wants to speak to you. For his son went and found the man and his children eating. He went to eat, the young man, the boy, went to eat with them, and the father said, don't eat with us. The boy came home crying. He said, Dad, you asked me to ask him to talk to you, but this man's very mean. He said, why? He said, I want to eat with his children, and he refused. He did not allow me to eat with his children. Now, the man go to his neighbor and says, the reason I was calling you, I want you to take care of my children in my absence, and you did not allow even my child to eat with your children? He said, this food is halal for my children and haram for your child. We're eating a dead animal. We are poor people. We cannot afford meat. And therefore, the mayita is haram. Your child cannot eat this food. This is haram for your child. The man said, Subhanallah. He said, you cannot do this anymore. He gave him all the money he wanted. It was taken to Hajj, he gave it to him. He said, take care of your family, man. And his group came and said, let's go. He said, I'm not going to Hajj this year. Why? I said, I'm not going. They went to Hajj, and they saw the man in Tawaf. They saw the man in Arafah. They saw the man in Mina, but they couldn't talk to him. They came back and said, you lied to us. He said, you're not going to Hajj. But you were over the Hajj. He said, Wallahi, I did not leave. The scholar commentary, this is qissa in the books. They made commentary. I think Ibn al-Qayyim made the commentary. It says, لَعَلَّ اللَّهَ جَعَلَ مَلَكًا فَحَجَّ عَنْهُ. He said, perhaps Allah made an angel to do Hajj for behalf of this man.
Alhamdulillah.
Can I just add something, brother, for a second?
Yes.
There's a beautiful, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Ustazi, or Sheikh, or Sheikhati, that, Imam al-Haramain al-Burhan, and the Malikis, al-Maziri, sharahahu, sharhan jayyidan. Imam al-Haramain says something beautiful. He said there are times when ada'u fard kifaya afdalu min ada' fard al-ayn. And this is what he meant by this situation. Or he said, ijtima'u, two individual wajibs come together. And if there are two individual wajibs that come together, there's actually two chapters here. And one of them will affect the community, and one affects you as an individual, and you're allowed to delay it because Sadat al-Shafi'iyya, al-Hajj laysa ala al-fawr aslan. Sah, Maulana? The Hajj for the Shafis, you're allowed to delay it in the first place, not like us. So he said in that situation, you can delay the individual obligation, and the mara'ah of the community takes precedence. The maslahah of the community. So in this situation, with people that are in need or people that are poverty stricken and they meet the criterion of accepting that, you should look after the community first. Wallahu a'lam.
I would only add one thing, sister, that our Prophet ﷺ says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So while you are able to defer your Hajj intention for a societal need that is of moral consequence, I would also say to you, always keep the niyyah, the intention of pilgrimage in your heart, so that in the event that if Allah does call you back, you die with that niyyah as a Muslimah.
We have a question from the brother side here.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
It's
salam.
less of a question, more of an observation that I would like to present. My wife and I actually ended up here kind of as an accident, as a matter of accident. We generally do not attend conferences like this, but somehow by an accident, my wife came across the information and she pulled me along, and I have learned enough in the last few years to know I have to follow the boss. So, however, the first presentation by Ms. Asma Hanif sort of right away told me the wisdom of why my wife was guided to be here. So it was very moving, and I'm grateful to have come across people who are so dedicated to service and to a purpose. But here's my question really, and it's more of an observation. For people like me and my wife who on purpose, who are very, relatively speaking, well informed about these things, yet on purpose are not inclined towards going to the ICNA, ISNA conventions and things like that. What platform systems do we have to communicate the type of information that systems or activities or actions or platforms like these exist? Because the reality is, we have been actually very actively interested in finding out information, yet, given the limitations that we have not been able to as readily find out this kind of information. So we end up going to the sources or centers that perform that service outside of the Muslim community. So that's more of a challenge and observation. How do we reach the people who wouldn't be typically coming to sessions like these,
Well, let me
yet
give
who
my
have an
guests
interest in that?
opportunity to respond. First of all, brother, you're treading on thin ice in front of the president of ISNA when you say that you don't go to ISNA conventions.
Absolutely, I was aware of that, and I mean no disrespect and none of that. Yet at the same time, I should be clear as to why I was maybe not aware of. Again, that may or may not be the reason, but if that is, then it should be clear that that is the reason that we are not aware of the work that is being done.
Let's let one of my guests take this. Yasmin?
I think I'll defer.
You're going to defer. Okay. All right. Brother Ibrahim, why don't you bite into this?
I'm not sure that I understand the question completely, but from what I heard, I think, brother, what your wife has done by directing you to come to an event like this, is probably the first step in a series of steps that you need to take to become more active and involved with these sorts of initiatives. And from here, I think you need to take this information back to your community. You need to consult with your local leadership, and what you fail to see available as a means and opportunities to effect real change within your own community, I think you should take from the wealth of knowledge that you have encountered, come into contact with here, and get some cards, make some contacts, rub elbows, and take that information back to your community and do it at home and build from home, I think is the message today. Wassalamu alaikum.
I'm sure that he's going to accept your answer. However,
if I may just add one more thing. Again, my point was I understand that angle to the answer. My question was, what does, as Muslim leadership, what do we do to make sure that information of that nature is more readily available otherwise? Because I am very well aware of that answer, and I've been through all of those things also, if I may say so. So it's, as I have said humbly, that we happen to be actually relatively well informed in that regard.
Okay, I appreciate your answer. Anyone want to tackle this? I think what he's saying is, how does the average person make himself more accessible to Islamic sources, Islamic information, the Islamic mainstream? One that may be a little distracted, one may be preoccupied with business, etc. How does he make himself more accessible and more informed?
With all respect to the questioner, I think his answer is in the question. He says that he doesn't go to events like that, but then he's asking about people who don't. One thing, I learned from a dear brother, Isa Shah in California, who became very active in the community kind of in a period of a few years when I came back from Egypt. And I asked him, how did you become so aware of everything that's going on? And he said, I came one day to the mosque and I volunteered. Okay. And he said, I started cleaning the restrooms. Then I went from cleaning the restrooms to vacuuming the carpets. Then I went from vacuuming the carpets to sit on the mashura. One of the things Imam Malik said, al-ilmu la yu'ta, al-ilmu yu'ta, that you go to knowledge. So I think that there are great efforts. I know Imam Zaid has a wonderful blog, Islamic Horizons. Imam Majid is constantly in the Washington Post, I believe. Sister Yasmin, you just released a book. There's sources out there, but I don't think it's fair to ask people who produce things to also make sure they reach the people. They're doing their best. So it's out there. You'll seek and you shall find is the golden rule. So I think that there's efforts. There's also even efforts within the arts community, within museums. In Boston, we're doing activities with them. I mean, there are things happening. The assumption that it's not happening, I personally feel is kind of problematic.
Okay, all right. Do we have another one? Sister, please, go right ahead. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm going to take this opportunity to ask if anyone has made any research about how much money the people that they adopt pets at home, how much money they spend to cover their pets' expenses. And I have heard that a lady spent millions to buy a necklace of diamond to her dog, while they take their parents to the nursing home. It's painful. Wallahi. Wallahi, it's painful. Just, we are Muslims, and we need to teach our children about this phenomena, to go back to our Islamic references. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَقَضَى رَبُّكَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا إِلَّا إِيَّاهُ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. I have not heard about Muslims taking their parents to the nursing home, but that started in our Islamic countries, unfortunately. So just let me tell you, I'm going to talk about another kind of poverty. When we take our parents to the nursing home, they are poor to love, the compassion that they had given us while when we were so little. So I need, if someone think about something like that, if they don't know how to realize how painful it is, just I'm telling them, put yourself in their position and think about it.
Let me let them
Thank
respond.
you. Assalamu alaikum.
Responses? Sister Asma? Would you like to comment on that?
Well, I agree that the elderly should not be in nursing homes. And in the shelter itself, there are older Muslim women who are there that who also become homeless. And I mentioned the incident of someone who was older and they lost their job. So as a Muslim community, we not just have shelters for those who were homeless by the one type of incident, but then there's also the category of having those who have no family in this country, as well as maybe their families were not Muslim, or maybe they're no longer available. So I agree with you, sister. We do need places for our homeless elderly to be.
Very good. We have a question here.
Yeah.
Very briefly, we're running out of time.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
My question is for Sister Yasmin, and I must admit you gave a moving speech, and I'm really impressed with your speech. At the same time, I'm really confused with one of the basic premise of your speech. You talked about poverty of soul, and you talked about poverty of heart, and you gave an analogy of a ship which will go to rock bottom, and because of the world is like a hole in the ship. You gave that example. Now, I give you 3 examples from the Islamic
Can you
history.
give us one example?
They are one-line examples.
One example, very briefly.
Sure. Take the example of Prophet Muhammad, a very successful trader. A third caliph, Hazrat Usman, again, a very successful businessman, the richest person in his time of Banu Quraysh. So my question to you is love for God and love for these worldly possessions, are they mutually exclusive? And if yes, if you say they are, then how would you explain the success of all these people?
Thank you, brother.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's a beautiful question. And the answer is that there's a difference between holding something in the heart and holding it in the hand. So the general rule with regards to love for God versus love for anything else is that we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the heart and we have the dunya in the hand. And what that means is that we are involved in the dunya. Like you said, the Prophet ﷺ was a trader, and some of the greatest companions were very wealthy, but their wealth was in their hand and not in their heart. When something is held in the heart, it means that that's pretty much what you love most. So the concept here is like the ayah says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ when the ayah is telling us that there are people who take rivals with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. That's the key here, is that they love them as they should love Allah. So I think it's very clear, it's not about love and no love. It's about loving these things of the dunya as they should only love Allah.
We have another question here on this side from the sister. Very quickly, sister.
Assalamu alaikum wa
Walaikum
rahmatullah.
salam.
Yeah, I'm talking about donation for the clothing and for the food. Yeah, I'm coming from Canada, and there are so many donation boxes and even food banks. So we don't know where to, charity begins at home. So we wanted these donations to go to our Muslim sisters and brothers, like the sister who said that there is the shelter which doesn't have, which they are in need. So we want us to give us the address or the organization so that we can donate from Canada all these things instead of donating to the donation box or to the food banks, which goes into the non-Muslims maybe.
Very good.
Yeah. The other thing is that
Can we just get her to respond to that first, please?
Assalamu alaikum. In the interest of time, sister, I do have a table out there that inshallah you could come and visit and we can talk. And for anyone else who's wanting to make a donation. Oh, Muslim al-Nisa. It's a table in the vending area.
Yeah.
But I just want to say one thing though. It is true, but that you need to help the organization that you know. And sister, she's doing a great job in helping the homeless sisters. And I'm quite sure in every community. But also that does not mean that your neighbor who is of another faith, who's in need, you don't help them. You
But
have to know in
charity
Islam.
begins at
No,
home.
excuse me, just sister. I'm talking to in the neighborhood, in the neighbor, that there's a rights of neighbors.
All right, okay.
In the neighborhood. In Islam, this neighbor, whether it's Muslim or not Muslim, have more right to you. And for my answer earlier, the reason I mentioned this story of the Hajj, I'm talking about the people whom you know that they're in need, but you will not be able to help every person in need and then delay the Hajj. But you do the aqrabun awla al-ma'ruf, person who's in need, your neighbor and so forth, regardless of their faith. Islam telling us that, and the Sahaba, they used to sometimes they get the sadaqah and said, give it to my neighbor. The first neighbor is the Jewish neighbor, give it to him first. Therefore, it is Islamic principle. I don't like anyone to get a misunderstanding from this gathering that we do not reach out to a person in need because he is not Muslim.
Sister, we have to move on here. Brother, go right ahead.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
This question is directed to Muhammad Maji of Ishna. What efforts are underway to form a federation of Muslim charities that can participate with employer charitable campaigns and raise up to 300 times more money to assist American Muslims here in the United States?
Thank you. Muhammad Majid.
We have been meeting many times with different charitable organizations, but one of the forum, inshallah, will be a social service forum. ISNA will hold like educational forum, and will be held, inshallah, in the beginning of this coming year, and will bring all the Muslims who work in social service, whether in shelter, whether providing food or any kind of service, to network, to create that directory that you're talking about. And inshallah, I would like you to give me your email or business card after the talk. We can get you involved, inshallah.
Okay, go back to the sisters here.
Yeah.
Very briefly, sister, please. Can we get
shall I
another
give-
comment in here?
Shall I give chance to others? Yeah.
Yes. Can we get another comment in, please, sister?
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Nadia Sanchez, and I'm sorry if I'm breaking my voice a little bit, but I was very touched with your, with Sister Yasmin speech. I'm a recent convert, or as I like to say, I'm a revert to Islam, as we are all born being Muslims. I feel like I'm a poor in my soul, so I feel like I'm swimming to the top and coming to this conference. I feel that, I see a light at the surface, so I really want to thank you for your speech, for everybody's speech. As an educator, I would like to share a little bit an experience with my kids this week. I share with them the United for Change for Poverty, and I will do this service if I don't explain, I say what they told me.
Very
and I'm
quickly,
paraphrasing.
sister. Please, very quickly.
Yes, I will. There are two things that they mentioned to me. I work with kids that have
Could
cancer.
you mention one, please?
I have with kids that mentioned that are dying with cancer. And I saw in them, a need for them to contribute. They told me, could we do a bigger fundraiser so that we could donate some things. And I told them I'm going to bring this up at the conference and see what the answer is. The other question I have is, how could we, keep our soul from becoming poor? Because I think all poverty leads to the poverty of the soul. When we are poor in our soul, we don't care, we don't have compassion, we don't have empathy for our neighbors. So that's my question.
Quickly, we've just got a few minutes left. Anyone?
Well, the first part of the question was about a fundraiser for the cancer. I wouldn't be the best to answer that, but for the second question about avoiding the poverty of the soul, I would say that, and Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah talks about this, there's two things that cause the heart to be, to kill the heart. And those two things, one is our sins, and the second is ghafla, is heedlessness, forgetting, not remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those are the two causes of the hardness and the death of the heart. So the solution, the cure to those two things, the solution to sins is tawbah, repentance, consistently going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and humbling ourselves and asking for forgiveness. And the solution and the cure to the second problem is remembering Allah often. Dhikr, remembrance of Allah, is the food of the soul. The same way we feed our body, we also need to feed our heart and our soul. And when we are not remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first and foremost in the 5 daily prayers. If a person isn't praying, and they're not praying on time, and they're not praying consistently, they are starving their heart. And that's why the heart eventually becomes sick and can die.
Over to the brother side.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. I have a FIG-related question in terms of trading in stock market in the US. Also, what about short selling? Is it halal or haram? I've been asking around, but I haven't really gotten a clear answer to it. And I think this is a question from behalf of the students who are studying in large numbers in accounting and finance, and also the investors out there. Thank you.
Anyone? Sister Asma? Suhaib Webb?
One thing, I'm not trying to be rude, is if we could keep the questions on topic. I don't mean that in a bad way. There is an answer to that question. You said the website? On the fiqh, at the North American Fiqh Council, there's a website there. But let's really, brothers and sisters, there's an adab also in asking questions. And I'm not trying to speak down to anyone. Let's stay away from comments because we're taking away time. Let's ask questions about what people have talked about. That way, we're able to maintain our focus. And I'm not, again, forgive me if I'm offensive to anyone, but it's very important that we focus on the issue of poverty. Omar said that if poverty was a man, I'd kill him. So this issue is something very serious. We could just try to maintain that focus. Jazakallah khair.
Very good. Let's go on to the next one.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
There's a lot of talk on the news, as we all watch, about like economic collapse and the dollar and whatnot. I'm not going too much into that, but how do we as a community, or what are maybe the sunnah of preparing ourselves with alternative forms of wealth and, as a community, and how do we, I guess, maybe take that fear out of our community? Because I think there's a lot of reasons why people aren't giving, and people are like, holding on to money. Oh, well, the money might not be worth anything, or we have to be stringent because, we have to look out for our own families. How do we kind of break that mentality, and how do we also look into, are there any efforts for alternative self-sufficiency in our communities, things like that, should something happen? Are our organizations doing anything?
Very good, thank you. Imam Ibrahim? No answer. Okay, anyone?
I would like just to share with you that if you have a backyard, the front yard in your home, learn how to grow things. Trust me. This one thing. Secondly, I would like to say that the issue of spending money, that fear of losing money, the Prophet Muhammad said, the two riwayah, the sadaqah will not diminish the wealth, it will increase the wealth. Therefore, if a person gives, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provide. Therefore, I would like not to have us to think by giving that we will lose. Allah will put more barakah and blessing, especially if we give someone who is in need. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of our own need. That's very important.
Let's go here to this brother.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Raza. This question is for the entire distinguished panel. but I'm actually going to put Imam Sohaib on the spot because he's my hero, and he's a hero of many people of my age group. Can you give us 3 real, tangible actions every one of us can take when we go home tonight to alleviate poverty? Jazakallah khair.
Thank you, brother. Imam Webb?
Thank you.
We may have time for just 1 or 2.
Get a different hero. No, I think what's first and foremost is to go to the mosque that you live in, local community center that you're around, and ask them what is the most important thing you can do at this moment in time to contribute to alleviating poverty. I'll give you one example quickly. In Roxbury, we have something called the Haley House. Haley House is a organic fair trade cafe ran by ex-convicts, people who are incarcerated. Many of them are Muslims who need volunteers. So that's a place where if you lived in Roxbury, where you could march over there and say, hey, how can I help you in your daily activities? And by you working without taking money, you're helping alleviate poverty because they're able to hire people who live in the neighborhood, which is being gentrified, and actually pay them a salary. So that's one.
Very good. Let's see if we can't get in another one here. One more. Very quickly, sister.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How do we make sure that we truly give help to the people that really need it and not become an enabler? Jazakallah. I have another one, but I'm not allowed to, right? It's really short. Like, for example, Sister Asma, if your organization was given wealth and you know that wealth came from winning the lottery, what should you do with that?
And that actually also goes to the issue of having unification in the community in terms of the social services, so that you know that a person is going from one masjid to another masjid in order to get sadaqah. But and I also want to take this opportunity to make a comment that in terms of the shelter, and when you're talking about people who are misusing funds, that when we go to the community, we ask for zakat, a percentage of the zakat to be given to the shelter on behalf of sisters who are zakat eligible. What the communities may say, or individuals may say, is that they don't want to give it to an organization, they want to give it to an individual. So if in fact the masjid gives the zakat to the individual, but then they're at the shelter, and the shelter is providing the food and the clothing and everything that they need, then it causes the person to be able to double dip. And it doesn't keep the doors open. But we can't take the money because, from the sister because it was given to them. So we need to take that into consideration when you as a community are giving. That, is it someone else already helping? So the shelter doors doesn't stay open, but the sister has money in her pocket. Now, and I have to say this really, really quickly. I'm sorry, and I needed maybe to mention the part about the giving, when people give zakat, and they want to give rice, and it's during the month of Ramadan, and they come and remember I say that we want individuals to have real food. We get so much rice during the month of Ramadan. I have enough rice in the basement of the shelter to feed a third world country. Okay? Please, can we get a fresh vegetable? Something else that would be, that would be a nourishment to the sisters' bodies, not just rice, mashallah.
We have time for one more from the brother side, and then I'm going to ask Imam Zaid to give the instructions for the salah coming up. Go right ahead, brother. You have about a few seconds.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks, everybody, for organizing this. I have a question. I've come to Boston to study, and I'm from a country in Europe, and I've come here and I feel my Islam is being fed in Boston, but also being here and throughout many sources. The issue is what I have is I feel that many places that we are lacking leadership to feed our poverty of our heart. I know there's resources like internet to try to feed this, but there are no leaders. And I know we can't just create them, but I don't know, just advice how, what does someone do when he's in an area with no leaders?
Very good, thank you. Last question here. Brother Ibrahim?
That is, well, tawakkal on Allah. rely on Allah. I doubt, and I hope, I pray, imams, I pray that there is no city, there's no town, there's no county in our country where there is no leadership for those who are desirous of guidance and light, and that the prospects for the growth of this religion in our country is much higher and much more fruitful than the picture that you have painted. And if there are areas that are lacking, then I think the statement to the imams is that we have to work harder, we have to be more instructive, we have to be more outreaching, and we have to be more accessible to the community. And I tell you, as a man from Boston, as your brother, that I love you, and Yusuf Mosque is your home, and if you're in need of that type of guidance, support, and assistance, you will certainly find it at our mosque. Assalamu alaikum.
We've come to the end of session number 1, unfortunately, for the Q&A. We will have another one after the break.